Okay, I got 103, so we're gonna go ahead and get started. Appreciate everybody being on. Uh, Matt, thanks for organizing this under short notice. We wanted to have a call about this as quickly as possible. Just introduce myself. I'm Randy Irwin. I am the national president of NEFI. So proud to represent you all every day. I want to thank everyone who's on the call. Thank you so much for joining. I do want to let everybody know that this is not a media call. So if you're with the media, this is nothing that you please, no media on the call. Nothing we say here is on the record, but not a media call. I do want to thank all the dues paying members out there, all the dues paying NEFI members. You make everything that we do possible. Membership is the lifeblood of this organization. Without you, we would not exist. So thank you so much. I do want to thank all the NEFI leaders out there. Um, all our, local officers, stewards at the council level, local level, you name it, national level as well. All our NEFI leaders out there. You're the ones who really make everything happen. So we couldn't do it without you. Thank you for stepping up and being leaders in this union. And I do want to just say, everybody, this union loves everybody in this union and cares about everyone in this union, and we will fight for you forever. So just want to kind of, get started with that. We're here to talk about these Trump executive orders. By now, everybody's heard about these orders gutting collective bargaining in the federal government. They were issued last Thursday night. So late Thursday, we started, getting word of all this and sprung into action last Friday. So glad we could have this call together for today, about as quickly as we could have organized it. Great to have you all. So this is just to put this in context. This is the biggest attack on collective bargaining rights that we have ever seen in this country. It is also an assault on your constitutionally protected freedom to form and join a union. This is, just something like we have never seen in this country, period, not just in the federal sector. If fully implemented, this executive order would take collective bargaining rights away from 1 million workers in this country. Uh, I mean, that is, I can't explain how kind of cataclysmic this kind of thing is. This is bigger than air traffic controller strike. This is bigger than some of the efforts to take away collective bargaining rights at the state level in Wisconsin and other places. It just dwarfs those efforts. It is plain to see that President Trump is trying to destroy unions in the federal sector. But let me tell you something. We ain't going nowhere. Okay. We aren't going anywhere. This union has been around for 107 years. Okay. We've been fighting for federal workers for 107 years, and we're going to be around for another 1,000 years. Okay. No matter what happens, NEFI is going to survive. They can have World War III, and NEFI, like a cockroach, is going to survive because the work that we have to do is too important. Okay. Again, we've been doing this forever, and we're not going anywhere. And this is a cheap thing that President Trump has done, and we're just not giving up the fight, and we're not going anywhere. So I want everybody to know that and believe that, because it's important in how we respond going forward. So I know at times like these themes seem bleak. Um, but believe me, we have been through these things before. For over 50 years, our union has had no collective bargaining rights at all. Um, we were able to survive and fight for federal workers during all those years. And then for the better part of a couple decades, Kennedy got us, gave us via executive order collective bargaining rights for the first time. Then we had the better part of a couple decades where we had collective bargaining rights via executive order. And then finally in 1978, we got collective bargaining rights codified into law. No matter how things shape up, this organization, this union, knows how to represent and fight for its people. We have also seen direct attacks on our collective bargaining rights in recent years. In 2002, Congress stripped bargaining rights for all Department of Defense workers in a Bush administration effort called the National Security Personnel System. And in some ways it was worse under that effort, that NSPS effort was worse than this one because they actually eliminated the right to bargaining by law. In this case, Trump just kind of with the stroke of a pen, is trying to strip collective bargaining rights, but it wasn't an act of Congress that did it. Your rights to collectively bargain are still very much intact in the law, and so we certainly have that on our side. When NSPS happened, just a little history. All the unions got together, and NEFI and the IAM played leadership roles in bringing a huge coalition of about 40 unions together. It was called the United DoD Workers Coalition, and that coalition fought tooth and nail to repeal NSPS. At first, to mitigate it, first to delay it, but then eventually to repeal it. And it took about 8 years, but we finally repealed NSPS. And that was one of the best legislative victories for the entire labor movement in the last few decades. So we're very proud of our win to repeal NSPS, which was just a terrible thing. What was common is that it eliminated collective bargaining rights. But in 2010, we got those fully restored, and they've been attacked ever since. But here we are facing these executive orders. So we're going to fight these executive orders tooth and nail. We're going to get with all the other unions, and we've already started to do that. But the most important thing is that we never give up. It's important that we never give up. At a national level, we will never forget. We will never give up. But at every different level, at every place where we represent members, we need everybody there, all our leadership, to never give up, because it is when we give up that we actually lose our rights. I mean, so we have to keep on fighting, and everything we will absolutely get through this. We're going to be fighting this in the courts first and foremost. That's going to be like the first place where we have to do that. Looking at the president's arguments for doing this, claiming national security when that's never been done before. These EOs are unquestionably illegal. And when the president does something unquestionably illegal, it is also unconstitutional. So he is violating his oath of office by even attempting, this nonsense. But bottom line is, we think we have a tremendous court case to be filed. There could be multiple court cases. The unions are coordinating on that, and Yvette's going to go into that in a little bit. But we are taking legal action right away, and we're fighting these things in the courts, as quickly as we possibly can. And all weekend, all the attorneys at the different unions were coordinating and putting those things together. But even if we lose in the courts, okay, and again, we really believe we have a tremendous legal case, but even if we lose, your rights aren't gone. They are just paused, okay? And that's why it's important not to give up. Your rights aren't gone. They're just paused until we either force Trump to give them back, okay, or elect a new president that restores them. And, we are going to go pedal to the metal, making sure your rights get, to protect your rights, from illegal and unconstitutional, unethical actions like President Trump is taking with these executive orders. But please remember, your right to collectively bargain is guaranteed under the law. And it takes a lawless president to pull a stunt like this and attempt to deny you your constitutionally protected rights. So I want to get into some marching orders. I want to get into a few things that we would like to see everybody out there doing, all of our leaders out there. We want you springing into action. Really, the time calls for unprecedented action. So first, get engaged. Get engaged like you've never get engaged before, because if we don't, this is the time to step up and demand that our constitutional rights be protected. And so, we need you to get engaged like never before. So a big thing that's going to be coming up here is, in these executive orders, the president is denying the dues deductions through payroll. So a provision in these executive orders strips away dues deductions. So what that means for us is we're going to have to move to an e-dues system. We're hoping for a seamless transition on this. One complication is we don't know the timing of this. I mean, President signed these executive orders, and we're certainly going to fight these in the courts and could get a temporary restraining order and things like that. But if they end up going through at different places, we don't know the timing of these things, and so we're trying to get a seamless transition. But we have an e-dues tool that has been created, and we want you to get prepared to transition over to a direct dues system where your dues don't come off on your paycheck and go through the agency and get sent here in a lump sum. Your dues would be sent directly to the union from payroll or from a credit card. If they take away dues deductions, then we have no other way. We just have to make that transition to direct dues or e-dues. And so it's very important that you take that process very seriously. We want to convert 100% of our members to e-dues as soon as we launch that. We will definitely be launching that within the next week or two at the very most. But again, we're looking for a seamless transition if dues do in fact get cut off. For all the leaders out there, help us make that transition. We want to get everybody moved over to direct dues, and again, that'll start in the next couple weeks. But then there's also, and we need to also encourage that with all of our fellow members. So we want to do it ourselves, but we also need to get everybody else to do that, because if people don't make that transition, it's gonna hurt our power. It's gonna hurt our ability to kind of, bottom line, if we don't get dues, make everything happen. So if people aren't converting over, that's going to make things very difficult. So please help us in that. And it is coming. It will be very explicit. You will see this. You will not miss this. So help us with that. Okay. So a few other things. In this, if you work for the VA or DOD, the secretary of your agency might still protect your collective bargaining rights on an individual location by location basis. Section 4 of the EO permits secretaries of Defense and Veterans Affairs to issue orders suspending the EO's application to your unit and continuing to recognize NEFI as the union. You should work with your business reps to make this happen, but you should contact management and tell them that you would like the secretary to order that NEFI continue to be recognized as your union, because your primary function is not national security work, which it's not, and labor relations work has been working well there. Okay. And it is also a possibility to be working with some of your members of Congress, your congressionals, to put some pressure on the agencies to make these things happen. They put those exceptions into the executive order. It's not clear, how if or how, those exceptions are going to be kind of issued if they make them. So we don't know. We don't really know anything about that right now. But if there's a way for us to, try to keep our rights by making those requests, I think we got to give those things a try. So everybody should be new marching order. Okay, everyone should be meeting with their members of Congress to express outrage over this. Be asking your congressional representatives to do their jobs and advocate for federal employees' right to a union. If you want to make a phone call to Congress, we suggest everybody making phone calls. And again, I mean, we should be expressing outrage about this. This is the biggest attack on collective bargaining rights we have ever seen in this country. His rationale for it is so thin, I can't even believe it. But yeah, we got to call Congress and express that outrage. And if they don't hear from you, then they're going to think that this is okay. So we need to really blow up the phone lines. We should be calling them. We should be asking our neighbors to call. Again, don't use work equipment, okay, or a work phone. Do it on your personal time, okay? So put that caveat. We don't want any violations, but we do want to blow up the phone lines at Congress. Every office needs to be hearing about this. This is not okay, and we need you all to kind of lead those efforts. And so get everybody uh, to be making phone calls to Congress. You should be also, calling the district offices and asking for meetings with your representatives and your senators. Everybody should got to be meeting with all the congressional offices that are in your area. Finally, we have an electronic newsletter, so that's an easy thing to do first. Matt, if you would pop that electronic letter into the notes there, we want thousands and thousands of these letters being sent. Okay. We just have to absolutely flood Congress with this. We need them to know. I mean, they're going to play an important role in, if we're going to get Trump to reverse course on this or mitigate it or, whatever, we don't know how it's going to play out exactly, but we will definitely need members of Congress as partners in getting us on the right track. So get involved with your members of Congress right away. Make the phone calls, write the letters, have the meetings in the district offices, attend the town halls, and if you have to, if they're not giving you, if they're not responding to you, not listening to you, what have you, let us know at Neffy National. Maybe we can help you. But also, I mean, it may be time to start demonstrating in front of their offices because what we are kind of the things being taken, the actions being taken against unions and federal employees. We have never seen attacks like this in this country, and we need Congress to start being proactive in protecting you from protecting your jobs and protecting your essential constitutional rights. So next thing is we got the IAM Legislative Conference, the IAM and Neffy Legislative Conference. That's going to start on Tuesday, April 29th, and all that week it's going on. Everybody should attend that. There has never been a more important time for you to get up on Capitol Hill and make your voice heard. We do this every year, and but this year it has special significance. So if you got money in your treasuries and you can send a delegate, we want to blanket Capitol Hill on that week, and that's just an important thing to do. I think we have a link here. Matt, if you could share the link for registering for the Legislative Conference in the hotel information and all that. If you the call letter, if you could post that link with all that information there, I'd appreciate it. Okay, so next action item is to make sure that you have up-to-date contact information for Neffy. We often use a lot of our contact information is agency contact information. We want to make sure we have personal contact information for you. Please make sure that we have up-to-date contact information so that we can communicate with you. Matt, if you could drop the link in there for the neffy.org/connect. Everybody, please give us your information. We don't want to go dark on you because, your government agencies aren't receiving emails from us or something to that effect. We don't know how things are going to shape up here. We want to be able to communicate with you. We've got the IM has made up a bunch of t-shirts for us. Federal Workers Matter t-shirts. You can contact the IM and request those. We may have seen some pictures online of us wearing those, but Federal Workers Matter t-shirts, go ahead and request those. Let's see here. There's a group called the Federal Unionists Network or Fun, and it's got a website, www.federalunionists.net, and they have been kind of acting, a great group to be a part of, and they've been coordinating a lot of the grassroots kind of activities, different demonstrations and rallies and big conference calls and things like that, and all the different unions have been kind of supporting it. And they're getting a lot of information out there, and some of the rallies, Neffy might not be doing a rally in your area, but the Federal Unionist Network might be coordinating activities among all the unions, and we wouldn't want you to miss out on an opportunity to kind of get involved in something that's going on in your area. So federalunionist.net, and Neffy is supporting that. And we'd like everybody to be kind of plugged into some of the things that are coming out through that. Matt, if you could drop that in the message board as well. Let's see. Okay, we got a few days of action that are coming up. First is April 5th. which is this coming Saturday. So timing was right that we were planning for that one. It's an all-in mobilization of federal workers across the country. You should clear your calendars on Saturday and make sure that you get to one of these rallies. You can go to a website called Hands Off 2025.com, where a lot of that there's information about that. Get plugged in, but we want to make a big public stand right away. We got some other things that are going to be in the works, but this is a really good one that we want to make a huge presence this coming Saturday. I'm going to be going to at least one of these, but big day this Saturday to get your families out there, get your friends. We need to kind of make a statement this Saturday. And another one that I want to kind of plug right now is on the tail end of our legislative week on Saturday, May 3rd. Nephi has a request for a permit for Freedom Plaza in Washington, D.C., which we've been planning this one for a few months. And we're kind of like in the late stages of getting a permit there. We've been told it's like 99%. So wait till you see this in writing before you book travel. But yeah, huge rally in Freedom Plaza in downtown Washington, D.C. We're going to have a huge rally. All the other unions are going to help us plan for it. And, it'll probably be the biggest rally that we've seen in support of federal workers. And I think there's also going to be a march involved with that as well. So, it's going to be a big thing Saturday, May 3rd in Washington, D.C. If you have any way to get here for that day, well, we've got our legislative week right behind that. So, for some people, if you kind of come for the legislative week and end up staying through Saturday, there's a good chance that we're having this big rally in Washington, D.C. So other days of that, on Friday, June 6th, there's a National Day of Protest. That's the anniversary of D-Day, and all veterans organizations and labor groups will be joining together in mass mobilizations in Washington, D.C., and every state capital, city hall, and town hall across the nation. So June 6th, the National Day of Protest, that's going to be a big one. If you are not a member yet, you have the ability to do this through the Nephi, Nephi1187.org. With these executive orders, again, directed dues might be disappearing at some or all at some federal agencies, impacted by these executive orders. There's only a small amount of time to sign up through Nephi1187.org. But if you want to sign up right now, that is still the mechanism that you can use right now, or fill out a physical form and hand it to a union rep to get submitted. But you can still sign up that way. We're trying to spread the word. We got to really, really spread the word. We got to get out there. We've been kind of, been out there 6 ways to Sunday in the media, in all the major newspapers we've been out there quite a bit on a national level. But we've seen great things also at the local level, council level, around all the rifts and everything. But now we've got this whole new media cycle around the impact of these executive orders gutting collective bargaining agreements. So everybody should get kind of do their homework and get boned up on how to talk about these issues. And but we definitely want to take this media. We want it to be local. So we want you all to be doing that. If you need help with that, we can set something up. Matt, I think we might want to set up some little training to talk about these issues, because it's a new thing, and we definitely want to kind of give people the information on that. But we want you certainly be continuing to kind of share the information that we're putting out on a national level, because we're kind of working with all the other unions and kind of getting some good messages out about this executive order. So we hope you'll be sharing those and reiterating those, and we want to do everything to help you do media locally. So we want you to watch out for a Nephi announcement about the Federal Employees Legal Defense Network. Lawyers can sign up to help federal employees. There's a website, wetheaction.org, where people where attorneys can volunteer their time for that. That's going to be an important part of things going forward, because we need more capacity there. And Yvette is playing an important role in coordinating that. Matt, if you could drop the wetheaction.org in there, I'd appreciate it there in the message board. And so also watch, okay, and back to this, I touched on this earlier, but this really is key, is be looking for that announcement about e-dues. When federal dues get stopped at these agencies, we need to be sure to sign up for, we need everybody to sign up and convert to those direct dues. So and we got to be sharing that information with everybody else in the union as well. Those are the big action items. And again, I just can't thank you all enough. We're going to move to some others, to some of the others on staff here, to talk about the lawsuit, talk about legislative action, talk about some of the guidance for things locally, and then we're going to get into some questions and answers. But I'll turn it back over to Matt. Thank you, Matt.
Thanks, Randy. Next we're going to go to Yvette Piacek, General Counsel, and she's going to inform us more about the lawsuit that will be filed soon, and our memo for NEFI leaders.
Thanks, Matt. Hi, everybody. Wish we were gathering in happier times, but here we are. The executive order that came out last week, like Randy said, is the worst this labor movement has ever seen. Talking about labor history, some of you have heard me talk about this down at the training center. We did operate for 50 years without collective bargaining rights. You think back to what was happening back before there were collective bargaining laws on the books. People were in the streets. They were striking. Companies were trying to put down these efforts by the working people to demand their pay. They were gassing people. They were turning hoses on people. They were killing people. There were people that lost their lives for union rights. And so, the collective bargaining rights were the compromise at that time to bring peace to America. That they didn't want people in the streets anymore. They didn't want anybody else dying. They needed commerce to keep kicking on all cylinders. And so that was the compromise, was collective bargaining rights. Well, I don't know how many of you have seen, there's hats on Etsy that say "Make Unions Violent Again." It's a riff on MAGA, "Make Unions Violent Again." We aren't calling for that, obviously, but we are calling for some of what unions used to do great, which is we probably do need to go out in the streets now. We need to go to rallies. We need to make our voice heard. And I will emphasize also what Randy said is, if we don't become furious about this stealing of our rights, then they'll get away with it. You have to be the squeaky wheel. We all have to step up. We all have to be noisy. And so that is calling your congressman. That is getting plugged into events near you. That's coming to our rallies. But let me talk about the lawsuit first. So that's our first big effort today, is we are hoping to file our lawsuit later today. It's all ready to go. I worked on it all weekend. We plugged in all the information. We are in coalition with basically all of the federal sector unions, have coordinated on a strategy. But the lawsuit that we are going to be filing is with a handful of unions. So it's NEFI, AFGE, NAGE, SEIU, and AFSCME. We are going to be likely combined with other lawsuits that are going to be filed in other districts around the court. We'll have to see how the litigation turns out, whether we will have all one hearing or if we're going to be able to argue it in several circuits. But NEFI is putting all of our resources. We hired an outside law firm to help us represent us on this case. And we are aligned with the entire community. And I'm hopeful that we could get a motion for a temporary restraining order out tomorrow. Business representatives are going to be contacting a lot of our local leaders asking for help with this lawsuit. We're going to need our local leaders to fill out declarations that you'll sign and actually file with the lawsuit. So if your BR reaches out to you today about filling out a declaration, please call them back, text them back, find out what that's all involved. And I'm happy to coordinate with you so that you're not doing it all by yourself. Same with our outside lawyer. They really want to be hands-on with that. But we will need some quick turnaround. So be ready for a call from your BR. about that. So let me talk a little bit about the guts of the executive order. Um, the executive order that came out, it is called the Exclusions from Federal Labor Management Relations Programs. It came out on March 27th. It's just one executive order that came with a fact sheet and then OPM issued guidance all at the same time. And as you know, the OPM guidance is to the agencies to explain to the agencies how to implement the executive order. So the executive order itself, along with the guidance and the fact sheet, when read together, it means that 18 of the named agencies now can no longer collectively bargain with NEFI or with whatever union is represented. Of our bargaining units, there are 6 agencies that are primarily impacted. So VA, GSA, DOD, our new APHIS unit within USDA, Passport Services, and BLM within Interior. The one carve out is that police and firefighters have been accepted from the application of this executive order. So luckily, our BLM firefighters, our position is you still have a union, your local's still up and running. They best not take you off dues deduction or deny your Weingarten rights or anything else, because firefighters are supposed to be not impacted by this. So those are the agencies that we're focusing on in the litigation. Um, you know, we've got a lot of agencies that luckily aren't impacted. Forest Service, Park Service, just a whole litany, HUD. We have a lot of folks that still have their collective bargaining rights. So if you've gotten this far in the call and you're like, oh crap, did I lose my rights? No, check the order, make sure that, you're up to speed on things, because this only really impacts a little more than half of our membership potentially. And why I say potentially is the executive order came out, the guidance came out, everything says should. The agencies still have to implement this, and how they're going to implement it is they have to decide if they're going to terminate the collective bargaining agreements. They probably will. What we're expecting is that agencies will notify the union that collective bargaining agreements have been terminated. So if you get that notice or you get any messages that indicate that management is already implementing this executive order, please send those to the BRs, because we need to keep track of the timing of when all of the moving parts in this executive order get implemented. So the first moving part is termination of the collective bargaining agreements. What this executive order also recommends / requires of our agencies is eliminating official time in the impacted agencies. So if you've worked official time, either on a 100% basis or any percent basis, or maybe even on a reasonable need basis, you might be reassigned. Be able to perform any representational activities once on duty time, once our CBAs are terminated. I just got an alert that my connection is unstable, so sorry if I'm cracking up here.
Yvette, if you could go back about 1 minute in that discussion, it froze up for a minute. Yeah, go back about 1
I
minute.
don't know where I was 1 minute ago.
More or less 1 minute.
Official time?
You were talking about official time. Yeah.
Yeah. Shoot.
No,
Stupid.
yeah. You're talking about official time.
Yeah. So again, official time for the impacted agencies, you might be reassigned because we can no longer perform representational functions on duty time without official time. That's the whole arrangement. So don't be surprised if you're reassigned. If you get any email, or if there's a hallway discussion or any information changing your use of official time, let your BR know. Because again, we don't know exactly when the agency is going to be implementing all of these moving parts. We don't know if they're planning on putting out official written notices. some of the messages that we've gotten so far from labor relations people, at least the ones that I've seen, have said, we're still evaluating the impact on this. So it's really important that you keep your BR posted in real time so that they can keep us posted at the national office, and then I can, respond in the lawsuit if needed. So official time, termination of the collective bargaining agreements, office space. You might be told to leave your office. You might not be told to leave your office. Don't do anything until the agency actually notifies you. But certainly in the executive order now no longer allows the agencies to provide office space. That also includes, allowing the union to use government equipment like laptops, printers, phones, and it extends to employee rights too. Employees can theoretically, we're expecting that there'll be a notice that goes out to employees that say you can't use government email to talk about union issues anymore. So hopefully all of you have anticipated this. We have been talking about it for several months in anticipation that you need to move off of the government equipment. You need to move your files out of your office. You need to download all your personal documents, make it an electronic copy and a paper copy, create your own records. You need to do that now if you haven't. Now is the time. There's no more waiting, because we could see that you're kicked out of your office and off of government equipment, at any minute now. Grievances are no longer probably going to be processed by the agency. That means that they will, stall in place. From my view, we would like to still keep track of all of the grievances that were in process at the time that this executive order was implemented, so that to the extent that we get restarted in a collective bargaining structure, perhaps we could restart the grievances from where we left off. So keep good files there. HIPs. So the executive order also said for performance improvement plans, they want to revert back to limiting them to 30 days. Most of our CBAs have, I believe, up to 90 days on a PIP. It can even be longer before the agency could, take any action in connection with performance. But now they want to quickly fire people that they think are performing poorly, and shortening up that opportunity period to 30 days is terrible, because often for most positions in the federal government, 30 days isn't a long enough period of time to demonstrate that you're doing the job. So we'll watch that, but certainly expect that to happen after collective bargaining agreements are terminated. Employees still have MSPB rights. You still have Office of Special Counsel protections. Now, those agencies have their own issues, obviously, with members being terminated and staff potentially subject to RIF. But the law hasn't changed here. All that has changed is President Trump has interpreted it a certain way. So don't feel that you don't have rights anymore. You absolutely do. We just have to do a workaround now for the near term. The other thing the executive order touched on, and then I'll pass this back to Matt, but removals for performance normally have to go through these procedures in Title V, Chapter 43 procedures. Now the agencies are being encouraged to just go straight to disciplinary action, calling performance problems misconduct, warranting swifter action, and they don't have to do the PIP. So watch for that as well. Again, this is just another way to quickly push people off the rolls and terminate people. And this is why you have a union, is because we make sure that you can't be fired without just cause, right? We fight for you. We protect your job in exactly this way. And so the executive order is intentionally trying to remove those protections that make the whole justice system work and the whole justification for a union to begin with. Once our collective bargaining agreements are terminated, of course, RIFs are going to be conducted a lot more quickly without the procedures of the collective bargaining agreement. We're going to have to watch that. They aren't going to be bargaining with us anymore on RIF procedures or even return to in-office work. telework articles that were in our collective bargaining agreements. Once they're terminated, that limits our ability to enforce those. Not just limits it, it eliminates our ability to enforce those. So that's all of the bad news. Definitely pull up the guidance and all of the information that's available online. Look at the fact sheet and you'll see exactly what was the motivating factor behind Trump issuing this order. You know, they pretty clearly pointed out that it's because the unions have been filing and winning lawsuits. It's because the unions have been filing grievances on return to in-office, RIFs, all of this, that they now have turned to just eliminate the rights altogether. So what that tells me is what we've been doing is working, and we need to continue to do it. But if we no longer have the peaceful grievance procedure, then we need to turn to the getting loud part of it. And that's what we're going to do with calling our congressmen, going through the Legislative Action Center, attending these rallies, coming to our legislative conference. All of that is now more important than ever. So definitely copy everything that's in that chat and get on it. Because that's what we need to do, and that's what we're going to do through NEFI. All of you that are leaders and stewards and officers over the years, you have been phenomenal, just phenomenal at advocating for your coworkers. Just because we lose this legal right now temporarily doesn't mean that your calling is over. We have more of a calling now than ever. So please stay active. I'm not going anywhere. The rest of NEFI's not going anywhere. And I look forward to seeing it out there in your shirt and holding your sign. And Matt, I'm going to hand it back to you.
Thanks, Yvette. Next, we're going to go to Steve Leckhart, NEFI's Executive Director, for an overview on legislation.
Good afternoon and good morning, everyone. As you've heard today, this is an unprecedented attack. It's a very expanded use of the national security provision that's included in Title V. And with that provision becomes a requirement that it is the burden of the president to show that this national security exemption is necessary and cannot be achieved under current labor structures, which it obviously can. We have NEFI itself has 107 years as the first federal employees union, 107 years in collective bargaining for close to 80 years. Through world wars, through many conflicts and many other emergencies, and labor never once has gotten in the way of the mission of the United States national security or otherwise. So they're standing on some loose ground. Now, we did know that eventually this was coming. The timing, of course, always takes you off guard because they keep their cards pretty close to their chest. But we were aware of this, and we've been preparing ever since. So we are working with the Congress since late last week. It's been a continuous string of phone calls and meetings with the House and Senate. We currently have a couple letters going in both the House and Senate that are sign-on letters, meaning that senators themselves sign on to these letters and members of the House sign on to these letters amongst themselves. These letters are to leadership and to the White House requesting or demanding that they rescind the executive order attempting to ban collective bargaining for national security reasons. Those letters are in progress. We also have some draft legislation in the House and Senate that we're working on to also reverse the EO and also protect collective bargaining. That is a work in progress. I don't have much more specifics on that, but it is to reverse it. I don't want to give anything away strategy-wise. We also are looking in the short term for some Senate language via amendments. There's going to be a lot of votes later on this week in the Senate, and we're looking to include some amendments on behalf of a few Democratic senators. The legislation that we're looking at is in the House right now bipartisan, and we want it to grow that way. One Democrat for every one Republican we pick up. to give us the strongest possible floor vote. We only need a few Republicans, and we should be able to hold them with some kind of legislation. But that's very tough in this environment. And the Republican leadership and the Trump administration comes down very, very hard on Republicans, even moderate Republicans who work in swing districts. So all of those things are going on. We also remind the Congress too. I always like to back out of an argument and say, hey, what are we really arguing about? And I remind Congress that to include in their notes when they're protesting this action by the administration that the federal workforce hasn't grown since 1952, down from 4 million people in World War II. So we haven't grown in size since the Eisenhower administration. The federal government fires employees at twice the rate of the general workforce. And that unions, have a very positive impact on implementing management initiatives and so forth. So that's important to remind them because those are the things they use against us and as the basis for pushing things like this executive order and other pieces of legislation that try to take unions away. They're all based on nonsense, and we can prove it. So that's where we're at. Day by day, we have a ton of interaction between us, the AFL, the machinists, House and Senate, Labor Caucus, Oversight Caucus, and we're going to see more legislation and more actions coming over the next couple of days. There's a lot of outrage on the Hill, and we're doing everything we can to get Republicans to share that outrage with us publicly. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Matt.
Thanks, Steve. Before moving on to the Q&A, I just wanted to reiterate that all the links in the chat that I had sent and that guidance for actions you can take to stand up for your rights, that's available on the NEFI website. And I'll post that link in the chat right now. So now we have a few questions that came in via email.
Matt, were we going to go to? Were we not going to go to Amy? I thought we were going to go to Amy.
Amy had indicated that we'd already covered.
Covered it well enough.
Yeah.
Okay.
Matt, can you mention the alerts one more time? I'm sorry, I forgot that part.
Yeah, we also have 2 action alerts. The one most recently responsive to this executive order is also on the NEFI website, and that is on our advocacy page on that main menu at the top of the website, and it's also in the chat here and in that the guidance that I just sent in that link. So we do have time for a few questions. Our first question here. So if we're in one of these agencies that is affected by the executive order, should we file any ULPs for prior issues for things that had occurred before this executive issue was ordered?
I think the question is if you were already experiencing things before this executive order came out that were actionable, but the timelines hadn't lapsed yet, should you still go ahead and file? Yes, preserve all your claims. Again, we won't be able to do the normal processes now, but the fact that you're preserving your claim by filing, I think is worth your time at this moment. Another thing is now that we no longer have official time, you will probably be expending your own personal time to prepare ULPs or grievances or that sort of thing. We covered this on a past call, but for those of you that weren't on the call, if you are going to be working personal time to do union work, keep track of the time, keep track of your hours, keep track of the documents that you're preparing. Because if we get a change in administration, one day we might be able to get some recompense for you for the effort that you're putting in that you would have otherwise, been paid because you were doing it on official time. So I'll keep it like that, and we'll go to the next question.
Yeah. Before we do, Yvette, can you talk a little bit about what if legally we get a temporary restraining order, what that might look like?
So ideally, a temporary restraining order will prevent implementation of the executive order. So basically that will mean it'll be like normal times.
Mm-hmm.
So again, we have to move fast to get the TRO motion. Hopefully we'll get that in tomorrow. And then we could have, best case scenario, we could have a judgment or a decision from the judge, as soon as this weekend. It's probably more likely going to be next week. But that's our goal. But in the meantime, like I said at the beginning of my presentation, the thing that each individual needs to be watching for is, what are you hearing from the agency? Because it's the agency that's responsible for implementing the executive orders. And if the agency's sitting on their hands, then we're okay until they get off their hands.
Thank you.
Our next question here, probably for the legal team. Yvette or Jeff, can you speak to the appeals court ruling that Trump can fire board members of independent agencies? So that's referring to the NLRB and Wilcox and MSPB member Kathy Harris were fired, and those firings were upheld.
So I saw that ruling came out, and I sent it around to everybody, but I haven't had time to actually read it. So I just know it's a bad ruling. I think Jeff can probably speak to it more. But yeah, it's not good for the labor movement, that's for sure. But I do know that the immediate impact is that, at least for federal employees, Kathy Harris's termination was upheld. So that leaves us, I believe, with one member at MSPB, which is not a quorum. But Jeff, if you could add on, that'd be great. Maybe you had time to read it.
Yeah, so generally, all those cases are about whether or not independent boards, which have multiple members from different parties, are constitutional. And so, several of the district courts have said that so Trump fired the Democrat from the NLRB when Wilcox. He fired Kathy Harris from the MSPB. He fired Susan Grumman from the FLRA. And so this Court of Appeals decision, I think that came out from the DC Circuit over the weekend, had two Trump judges on it. And one of the judges, wrote that independent boards are unconstitutional, but they've been around since 1935, since the Humphreys decision. And so this is a really bold legal move that's going to end up before the Supreme Court. And if the Supreme Court says that, the president can appoint everybody on all these boards, they're going to become fairly useless. And, I don't know whether it's going to leave the whole administrative scheme. But that remains to be seen, that remains to be seen. So I think that's about all I can say about it.
Thanks, Jeff. So one other question here was, so if our collective bargaining rights are removed at our agency, does that affect our restrictions on our ability to strike?
Good question. That's a very good question.
So I love the question. Federal employees can't strike, or else, they'll be fired. So I would say that NEFI certainly is not calling for any of that sort of type action. We have a lot of other tools that we can use in our tool belt short of that one, but it does create an interesting new future. And something that Congress will eventually, I think, have to take up before we know for sure whether we have the strike back.
Well, let me just add on to that. So lots of times when we're doing organizing, employees say that they thought that they had signed something that said they couldn't belong to a union when they were appointed, but just the appointment papers usually contain some sort of statement that federal employees are not allowed to strike. And so that is not dependent upon the collective bargaining rights. And so federal employees do not have the right to strike. And 16,000 people from PACO found that out back in the 1980s. So don't do it. Don't do it.
Thanks, Jeff. I think we have time for one final question here. So this question is, since so many agencies are now designated as national security, shouldn't we now be exempt from RIFs and hiring freezes? Since the executive orders all have exemptions for national security purposes.
Great question if you buy into
Great.
the premise that
Great question.
really is a matter of national security. Remains to be seen how the agencies are going to implement it, if they're going to take that tack or not. I would say probably not. I think it was clear from the fact sheet and the other language in the various documents that they are simply trying to get to the end game faster, which is shrinking the federal workforce through RIFs, pressure campaigns like return to office, that sort of thing. So that's what I think about that.
Certainly worth a point to be making. I mean, this administration has been very hypocritical in their, in their interpretation of everything. And that's a great point that I hadn't thought of. But yeah, if they're going to be saying that we could take away collective bargaining rights because of national security, then the same should apply as it relates to RIFs. And I think that just emphasizing that shows the hypocrisy of this administration.
All right. Thanks, Randy and Yvette. Now 2:00. Randy, I'll turn it over to you for some closing comments.
All right, folks. So sorry we're going through this. Again, this union isn't going anywhere. We will never give up this fight. You've heard how we're fighting this on many different fronts. You wait to get information from your agencies before you take any action. But we are going to be fighting this, and we need everybody to stay with us and continue to be a part of this fight because this is about as big as it gets. But thank you all for all that you do every day. Thank you for your membership. Thank you all the leaders out there. We can't thank you enough, and thank you for all you do for the American people every day. Thank you, everyone.